Today, I'm going to rank each of the paintball maps worst to best. Remember that this is only my opinion, so be sure to share your map rankings in the comments section. Now, the worst map by far, in my opinion, is Drive-In. Now, my first objection to Drive-In is that the map is way too large for any sort of 8-person game. If you tread moderately carefully, you can walk from one side to the other without seeing a single other player. And this makes for some decent flag running for the offensive team, but it can make it difficult or impossible to defensively return a flag, especially if it's being returned by a teleporter. But even aside from flags, you could hide in a multitude of places and never get spotted for a whole game. And in most other maps, the same just cannot be said. Another problem I have with Drive-In is its performance on the Oculus Quest. This might not be a problem for you if you have the Quest 2 or some other higher performance headset, but I often find that while playing Drive-In, I get half the frame rate I would on a different map like River or Quarry. The Quest 1 just can't seem to handle the large map size in combination with the paint throwers. Plus, while recording on the Quest 1, the frame rate gets even worse. And so the last objection I have is that all the little kids love it. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's just slightly annoying when you do Drive-In 3 times in a row because all the little kids in the game just want to use the big guns. And I get it, the paint thrower guns are really cool, but in my opinion, they're just not cool enough to merit playing Drive-In over and over and over. Playing it once is bearable, but playing it 2 or 3 or 4 times in a row is just flat out frustrating. And playing any map that many times is already annoying. Moving on, a slightly better map is Clearcut. This ranks 5th on my list, but honestly I much prefer Clearcut to Drive-In. It does have a couple things wrong though. In my opinion, the automatic rifles that are scattered across the map can be really overpowered. With 2 of them and proper aim, a player can make it difficult or impossible for the opposing team to recover, and the game becomes drastically one-sided. Also, the red team has an advantage in this sense because there are far more ARs on the red team's side than on the blue team's side. Imbalanced gameplay is one of the problems that can plague drastically asymmetric maps like Drive-In or Clearcut. Clearcut isn't all bad though. I love how the multitude of places to climb tends to breed complex paths and interactions among properly balanced teams. Although it's not often that a game is balanced in Clearcut due to the ARs, when one is, the map is an absolute joy to play. Surprising your opponents is one of the ways to gain an edge on them in a fight, and finding ways to utilize the diverse set of obstacles in Clearcut makes for a fun and interesting challenge. Moving on to the next best after Clearcut, which I gave to Homestead. At this point, all of the maps I talk about I genuinely enjoy playing almost every time, including Homestead. It has some great redeeming qualities, but also falls short in a few areas as well. One of the main reasons Homestead doesn't rank higher on my list is because of how narrow the map tends to seem at times. The large barn in the center creates essentially 2 choke points, which can make it extremely difficult to score and capture the flag when the teams are even somewhat balanced. Plus, it makes recovering from a spawn farming position quite difficult, especially given the relative lack of cover on both teams and the positioning of the red team's grenades at such an advanced location. However, I think that on Team Battle, this point becomes moot and Homestead is a really great map. One of the things that I think makes Homestead so interesting though is the barn. There are a number of surprising places and routes one can take through the barn, and it serves as a unique and interesting obstacle for all levels of players. My next favorite map would have to be River. Although I love River, as it tends to be one of the maps I play best on, I do still have to rank it 3rd place for a couple reasons. Firstly, I think the map is highly unconducive to newer players. Most new players aren't skilled enough to see bullets coming from across the map. Since River is one of the most open maps, perhaps tied only with Quarry, new players are extraordinarily easy to take out from long distances for any better player. Some of my best scores have been on River since it becomes nearly impossible for inexperienced players to escape their base. If 1 or 2 other experienced players have double pistols and can hit their targets from the center of the map. But River is still one of my favorites, and that's mainly because of the interesting interplay between the obstacles and grenades in this map. On the whole, it's a very wide open map, and yet there exists some key obstacles that when utilized properly provide a huge advantage. One of my favorite spots is behind or within the trees in either team's base. These trees, despite having relatively narrow trunks, can make you a much harder target to hit.
Red team
A surprising
scores.
amount of bullets actually hit these trunks, especially if you can properly shield yourself from using them. But all in all, my favorite part of River is how balanced it tends to be when the teams are relatively balanced. Both sides are virtually the same, with the exception of a couple of rather negligible features in both teams' bases. Now, the next map I would choose is Spillway. I might not be as good at Spillway as I am at most other maps, but it ranks as second place in my list because of how different it is from all the other maps, and how well it pulls off the asymmetrical style. Both the red and blue teams' bases are fully enclosed buildings, slightly similar to the central barn in Homestead. However, I think Spillway pulls off the idea much better as they are spawn locations rather than a central space. Since they are spawn spaces, it tends to make spawn farming players a little bit more difficult, although it's definitely still possible for more skilled players to do so. The highly enclosed spaces tend to make listening a valuable skill on this map. A player who can listen for their opponent has a huge advantage in Spillway because oftentimes parts of the map near you are obscured from your vision, but not from your hearing. Plus, Spillway is the perfect map for the shotgun in my opinion because of the general lack of longer range awareness in certain parts of the map. I mentioned this a little bit ago, but its asymmetrical structure is nearly perfectly pulled off in this case. The red base tends to be more open at the front and closed at the back, whereas the blue base is the opposite, being more closed at the front and open in the center. And now for my favorite map, Quarry. This might be a little bit controversial because I know that some don't like the way that snipers can be so effective in this map. However, just as I think of Spillway as being the shotgun's map, I think of Quarry as being the sniper's map. Personally, snipers are one of my favorite weapons because there's no way to call it spam or luck. If you can consistently hit sniper shots, there is no doubt that it is skillful. Plus, it takes lots of practice to become accurate, and even more to become accurate from the hip. This difficulty in learning makes up for how overpowered they have the potential to be. Just think, all it takes is one shot and they can literally hit anyone in their line of sight, which is almost everywhere in the middle of Quarry. Thankfully, doing this is extraordinarily difficult, which balances this potential. The obstacles and the interesting elevation pattern on Quarry are also another part of what makes it my favorite map. The rocks are a surprisingly helpful obstacle if used properly, and the different bases provide just enough cover to make defending possible, but offense not impossible. The V-shaped terrain toward the center of the map also serves as a highly interesting landscape for virtually every kind of battle. There are plenty of other redeeming qualities of Quarry, and all these qualities mesh together to form what is, in my opinion, the best map for both experienced players to battle it out in, as well as inexperienced players. It does tend to be a little imbalanced when the disparity between team skill is rather large, since spawn killing in Quarry is quite easy. And that's it. My favorite is Quarry, second is Spillway, then River, Homestead, Clearcut, and very much in last is Drive-In. And yeah, thank you all for watching. If you liked the video, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And make sure to list out your favorites list in the comments below.